All right, everybody, welcome again to another Thursday afternoon webinar presented by the U of I Extension Local Foods and Small Farms team. I guess we saved the best for last, or second to the last, maybe. This is our second to last webinar for the 2015 season, and with us today is Andy Larson. Andy is a local foods and small farms educator in Northern Illinois, Boone, DeKalb, and Ogle, perhaps.
Yep, that's right.
All right. Andy's new to us. He came over from Iowa. He was in Illinois for in extension previously, but we're welcome to have him here to talk about Veggie Compass, which is a record-keeping system he'll be discussing this afternoon. So, Andy, off to you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Like Mike said, I'm Andy Larson. I am a local food and small farms educator just like he is, and the funny thing about this is that Mike is actually actively producing vegetables right now, and I am producing poultry, and I'm doing the talking about a vegetable farm financial analysis system, so he might be able to have some really good information to lend to the whole conversation as well. So I am working in Oregon, Illinois right now. I hail from Pecatonica, Illinois, a little bit further north from there. Have born and bred and now back in Illinois to do some extension work. So let's get rolling on Veggie Compass. So Veggie Compass really builds itself as a farm profitability management tool. It's really, really focused on making sure the folks who are raising diversified vegetable crops have a really good sensibility for what's making them money and what isn't in order to make better farm decisions. The website written there, veggiecompass.com, will take you right to the University of Wisconsin page that houses Veggie Compass and some of its associated tools. So if you'd like to download a copy of that, you can go there. I also have it listed as an attachment. I'm not exactly sure how a participant in this thing downloads an attachment. I hope you have a link or a bubble somewhere that says there's an attachment that you can download. That unit has the entire Veggie Compass spreadsheet tool as well as the user manual built into it. Okay, this is the stuff I want to talk about today over the course of the next hour. I really want small-scale fruit and vegetable growers to know what Veggie Compass is and what it isn't. There's some things that it's really useful for, but I want to make sure nobody has any preconceived notions that are erroneous. I want you to know what kind of data you need to collect in order to actually get some utility out of Veggie Compass, and talk a little bit about the record keeping required to collect that data. How to enter your numbers into VC, Veggie Compass. I'll use VC as an abbreviation over the course of this hour a little bit. And how to interpret the results that Veggie Compass spits out. I want to start the actual content by saying a big thank you to UW-Madison. Veggie Compass was developed and continues to be improved by a team of dedicated academics and outreach professionals there up in Madison. I have indeed borrowed liberally from presentations made by a couple of the people on that team, John Hendrickson and Aaron Silva. They are members of the Veggie Compass development team. There are some sponsors that I want people to know about that helped Veggie Compass become a reality. University of Wisconsin-Madison Center for Integrated Ag Systems, their website is right there in front of you. The USDA Risk Management Agency, or RMA, and the Cirrus Trust all were major contributors to the development and continued improvement of Veggie Compass. I also want to mention Southern SAWG, the Sustainable Ag Working Group. They have an online course called Growing Farm Profits, which is also free, just like Veggie Compass is. And they've developed a series of 8 video tutorials on Veggie Compass, one of their local farmers down there that has been using Veggie Compass for a number of years. As a matter of fact, a lot of the numbers I'm going to show you today are coming from her. So there's that series of video tutorials will probably take you into even more depth than what I have the time to get into. So it's really a good thing for you to check out if you want further education on this tool. So just a little bit of background. Veggie Compass was born in '06 when that UW team that I mentioned joined forces with a renowned small farm finance consultant from western Wisconsin. His name is Jim Munch. He's an organic beef producer. And their objective was to create a user-friendly cost accounting spreadsheet for veggie growers. User-friendly is open to interpretation. There's a fine line between user-friendly and fully operational. So I think they've towed that pretty well. They did some testing and gathering of data through 2009 from 2009 to 2012, and they have released the first refined version to the public there in 2012 and have been updating it regularly since. So if you do download Veggie Compass from veggiecompass.com, I would go ahead and sign up for their email updates so that you also get notified when there's going to be a change or an update to the Veggie Compass tool itself. So Veggie Compass is basically a big honking financial spreadsheet. It's intended for diversified fresh market veggie growers, and the whole point is to organize cost and sales data in order to generate cost of production by crop as well as profitability by market channel. And when I say market channel, I mean the specific outlet by which you're marketing your produce, such as farmers markets, CSA, wholesale, farm stand, whatever. The objective of developing Veggie Compass was to help these farmers do some more thorough analysis than what they got by doing their taxes, and improve profitability through better planning and decision making. Veggie Compass isn't a record-keeping software. It is not. It uses end-of-year data from your record-keeping software that you've already kept, but it's not really a good format for keeping the day-to-day cost and sales and labor data. Nonetheless, if you want to use Veggie Compass for financial analysis, it's good to get familiar with the different types of data that are necessary so that you can modify, expand, cut down, whatever, or simply increase the level of detail that you have in your existing record-keeping system. So with Veggie Compass, farmers can get an idea how much labor you put into each crop and the expenses that go into each of those crops. This is supposed to be able to indicate which crops are best suited for a specific market channel, such as some crops may sell farmers well at farmers markets, but they don't do well at CSA or wholesale or whatever. It can help guide pricing decisions because you understand your true costs, your break-even costs for each crop that you produce. It allows farmers to look at all of their crops in the same units in order to compare them percentage-wise. And we'll show you that towards the end of this presentation today. So, all said, this will aid you in deciding what crops to grow, how much, and where to sell them. That's going to help you become more efficient, identify your strengths as a grower, and identify that actual crop's strength as far as getting you to profitability. So, if I can do this correctly without much further ado, I want to go ahead and get into the Veggie Compass tool. I'm going to spend part of my time during this presentation navigating around Veggie Compass itself, because I figure that's probably the most useful way for you folks to become familiar with the tool. So let's dive right in. We're going to talk about the type of data you need to collect and the type of analysis that Veggie Compass performs. So I want to give you just a quick heads up. This thing is going to look kind of intimidating at first, especially for those of you who haven't spent a lot of time with spreadsheets. Stick with me. I'll try to break down the parts, and I'll put everything in the most straightforward terms that I can. So let's get familiar with the overall layout. I've got my mouse set so there's a little trail on the cursor, so hopefully you guys can see when I'm moving that around a little bit more easily than just the arrow by itself. There are a bunch of these tabs down here on the bottom. These are what you're going to use to navigate around Veggie Compass, jumping from sheet to sheet. The first two tabs are the introductory and instruction sheets. So there's a quick intro to Veggie Compass, a few details about who to contact for help. John Hendrickson is the main contact in Madison, Wisconsin at the Center for Integrated Ag Systems. Also, Southern SOG is listed as a contact. This user manual here on the second tab is a really, really valuable resource. I know that most people who download Excel templates probably don't spend a lot of time reading the user manual that the authors went to the effort of creating, but I got to tell you, this is a really good resource. I have one sitting here next to me in case one of y'all try to stump me during this presentation today. It is formatted in such a way that if you are on this tab and hit Control P to print, it should be formatted pretty well on paper as well. So this manual provides pretty concise instructions for all of the little intricacies associated with this tool, such as the little red triangles in the cell means there's a pop-up note. And if you hover over it, you can see what it says. The cells are protected, so you don't have to worry about messing up any of the built-in formulas by accident, and there's a lot of them. If you so happen to be sort of a spreadsheet power user, the manual does provide the password as well for unprotecting the sheet, so you can make modifications to the tool and use it for your own purposes. The next three tabs, Step 1, Step 2, and Step 3, are the input tabs where you're going to provide your data from the year-end records. So Step 1, expenses input. So for those of you folks who might be brand new to farming, all of this may look sort of unfamiliar and confusing. And that's okay. It won't be for long. For those of you who have got a couple years under your belt farming already, you're probably familiar with filling out a Schedule F, which is how most folks refer to the IRS tax form 1040, which determines profit or loss from farming. I'll even pull one up here if I can do so successfully. There we go. Hopefully you can now see what I have. Yes, excellent. Okay, so this is the Schedule F. Form 1040 from the IRS, profit or loss from farming. And in the second part, the part 1 is farm income, part 2 is farm expenses. And you can see that a lot of these records down here, a lot of these listings down here are going to be pretty similar to the expense categories in Sheet 1 of Veggie Compass. Car and truck, fuel, utilities, supplies, repair and maintenance, depreciation's in there. They're almost all there, although several of them have been modified or maybe even expanded to some extent. So now, if you haven't already been keeping track of some of these different expense categories, now you have two really good reasons to do so. One is because Uncle Sam wants to know. And two is if you keep track of that stuff, generally you're going to have better luck at knowing what kind of decisions you need to be making for your farm. Pull Veggie Compass back up here. Okay. Looking back at Sheet 1, the expenses input, you'll notice that each of these expense categories has way more than one blank to fill out. I mean, if this were a Schedule F, it'd just be this one green column on the left that was total costs. We have a lot more than that. We've got another dozen or so columns over to the right. That's because the whole idea of Veggie Compass was to develop a level of farm financial analysis that's quite a bit more useful than what you get from just completing the Schedule F with your tax accountant. So you'll begin just like the Schedule F, filling out this left column with the total costs here. But the trick is to be able to allocate all of these different costs to the individual production and marketing aspects of your enterprise. This is going to help you determine specifically where the cost centers of your operation are. So this yellow column here is for general, management, and administration. Okay, that's something that you can't ascribe to a particular cost, ascribe to a particular crop or a particular marketing operation. For example, record keeping or sales calls. There is going to be general management and administration. There's going to be this open block here in the middle. We are not going to put, and this is, as you can see over to the left in beige here, these are all labor. You do not need to put any labor costs for the seed greenhouse and field growing and harvesting and packing section here yet. That's going to be done later on in the Veggie Compass tool. Okay, production labor, this pink column here. This is going to be where you want to enter the price you paid for the labor that you hired in order to do your farm work for the course of the year. This goes without saying, you need to have a pretty good way to record hours for your farm labor. Also, the CSA Farmers Market Wholesale, Farm Stand, and Resale categories, these columns here in the orange through the darker blue, those are describing those specific market channels that we talked about earlier. So, in addition to having production-centered labor hours, you're going to need to have marketing-centered labor hours. So whatever labor tracking that you do, you're going to want to tag those labor hours with the particular production activity or marketing activity that they were related to. If you want, you can rename these columns for the different market channels, just to more accurately reflect how you're doing your sales, but neither the CSA or the resale channel should be modified. This is because they have unique formulas that go into analyzing those two channels, and we'll talk about why in a little bit here. The labor expenses for, as I mentioned, these labor expenses for seed, greenhouse, field growing, and harvesting and pack are not entered up here, but the expenses related to insurance, car and truck, fuel, utilities, office, soil amendments, etc. can all be entered on this first spreadsheet. Quite frankly, the accuracy of entering a lot of these expenses in this first spreadsheet, specifically labor, are really going to have a huge influence on the quality of the information you get out on the back end. At the bottom, you'll see your total labor costs, your total cost per operation. You'll also notice that as you scroll down, those top couple of rows with the instructions and the expense category titles stay there. Those frames are frozen. It's useful so you always know which column you're entering data into. The reason I wanted to point it out is specifically to be aware that there could be more to a spreadsheet that you're not seeing if you haven't scrolled up or down yet, specifically if you're using a small monitor. So be careful with that. So for step one, you should probably be realizing by now that you not only need to keep good records of farm expenses by these Schedule F categories, but by general management, by production category, and by market channel. So if you're not already keeping labor that specifically ascribed from those different categories, we'll talk about how to do so in a couple of minutes here. Step 2. Step 2 is the sales input page. So this is where you're going to be entering the total sales and the total units sold of each crop in each market channel. For the most part, it's pretty straightforward. You basically go through your weekly market load or delivery list, and then you pull out your sales totals for each of those and enter those into Veggie Compass, and it's going to calculate an average unit price. So if you had, for example, broccoli at the farmer's market up here, you had $1,200 in broccoli sales, you sold 400 units, the average unit price is going to be $3. Veggie Compass will do that $3 on its own. The one tricky thing with this sheet pertains to CSAs. And if you're not familiar with CSAs, it's community supported agriculture. It's a subscription farm. Most of you are probably familiar with that. Generally, a flat rate is going to be charged for every share in a CSA. And this rate doesn't always accurately reflect the market value of the crops that show up in the CSA box. Okay? So what Veggie Compass does is ask you to provide a total CSA income figure over here at the right. See these cream-colored boxes over at the right? The cells that have red text in them, that's where you need to provide an amount from outside records. It's not going to be calculated from within Veggie Compass. Okay? So you put in, say you made $39,000 on CSA subscriptions, then you use your typical market value for the sales associated with the units of a crop sold. Then what Veggie Compass will do is it'll decide your adjusted sales. It'll decide whether your CSA price is covering the cost of those crops or whether it's a little bit too low, which is really good information in and of itself. So in addition to CSA Income, there's a couple other red text things over here in the cream color box. Buy, resell over here. If you're buying market ready product and reselling it, that's where your total sales or your total income is going to go. If you have other income from USDA payments, interest, other rent, whatever, it can go in those red boxes as well. Okay, so total sales, units sold, calculates unit price, and you're going to get your total crop sales, your total units sold across all the different channels. It's really fairly simple when you break it down that way. The last input step, step 3, this is the production input page. So there's a few more of those cream colored boxes at the right over here. So those we know are special. And by the way, you can probably see that when I'm hovering over these boxes with the little red triangles that a note is popping up. These notes tend to be really valuable, inserted by the authors of Veggie Compass. They'll give you hints and tips as to how to fill in those cells. So, once again, these numbers over here at the right in the cream-colored boxes have to be inserted in total from outside records. They're basically going to be hours from activities that are not easily allocated to one specific crop. And that includes hours worked in the greenhouse, non-crop specific hours spent in field production. Say, for example, you were spading a field or planting cover crops or whatever. Not crop attributable. Also, the non-crop specific hours spent harvesting and packing. Think about operations such as field cleanup or taking inventory. Those are going to go in here as well. And your record-keeping system should build those type of hours into the data that is inputted, so you have this to put into Veggie Compass at the end of the year. Okay. That all aside, step 3 is primary. The rest of this page is primarily where you're going to enter the cost that you can ascribe to a particular crop. That includes seed. And by the way, transplants, if you buy transplants rather than growing from seed, the transplant cost should go in the seed cost column as well. Crop-specific materials, right in this column for the field growing, that's included as well. Think about things like black plastic or tomato cages. Okay? And then you're going to be entering, once again, total labor hours in both field growing and in harvest and pack. Okay? So all of those hours are things that you need to have been tracking over the course of the year. Veggie Compass is then going to take all the production labor costs divided by the hours devoted to specific production activities and spit out this cell in K4, which is your production labor costs per hour. That's a really neat figure to have, all right? It's not what you're necessarily paying as a wage per hour or as a salary or anything like that, but it's a pretty close calculation of your the production labor cost that you're paying per hour, despite what's actually going on the checks that you write. It's a great figure to know if you're considering doing things like purchasing equipment to save labor. It'll help you determine the payback period of an investment in, say, a water wheel transplanter or a mechanical cultivation system or whatever. You'll know exactly how much you're saving in human hours per year based on that cost. Okay, sort of a whirlwind introduction to the input steps. General farm expenses, just like the Schedule F, with a little bit more detail, and also allocating those expenses across production, general, and individual market channels. By the way, I forgot to mention this check column over here at the right. All that does is it adds up the figures that you've entered in column C, this yellow column, through column N, this blue column, and make sure that those add up to exactly what the total costs you entered in the left-hand green column. Sales input. Remember the funny thing about the CSA with the adjusted sales, but sales in dollars, number of units sold, average price you're receiving per different market channel. All right, and finally, production input. Seed, what area it's covering, and by the way, I forgot to mention as well, you are going to have to choose one particular area planted unit, acres, row feet, or square feet, and use that consistently throughout the course of your farm. Non-labor costs, labor hours. Those are the things that got to go in steps 1 through 3. I know when you lay it out that way, it sounds simple, but at this point you might be wondering how on earth you're supposed to collect all that data on expenses, on labor hours, on sales, without spending every available moment that you've got doing your record keeping. I recognize that conundrum. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here if I can switch back to my PowerPoint. Mike, are you seeing my PowerPoint? You are! Okay! So, I know it's intimidating, but there are certainly ways to streamline the processes that you need to do in order to collect the kind of data that you need in order to use Veggie Compass. It needs to become not only doable, but habitual. I mean, this has to be sort of fast twitch type of stuff for you. And whatever system that is required to make it quick, easy, and streamlined for you, that's the system that you should adopt. Okay? So, this data it's a lot. I mean, all those farm expenses for step 1, pretty much everything that you've done associated with the farm. For step 2, all the sales, all the quantities, and step 3, seed, transplants, growing area, hours. The hours are such a hard thing, and especially the ones that are not crop specific. So, but we need all of that stuff to be sort of thorough in creating the bottom line financial picture of your farm. There are tools out there. Fortunately, there's quite a few tools, but you've got to decide what you want. I want to say right up front that the shoebox or the receipt envelope is not a particularly effective tool for record keeping. If you go to your tax accountant at the end of the year and you hand them a huge pile of receipts and hope for the best, that's not really a financial management technique. That's a hope for the best technique. Plus, it probably annoys the heck out of your accountant, so be aware of that. Alright, so what are these tools that might be useful in keeping the records that we need? Well, the trusty old pocket notebook is still not obsolete as a farm record keeping tool. Okay? It's not like super specific or super exacting or anything like that, but just always having something to write down, you know, the unexpected expense, the check that comes in the mail, the timing of a pest's arrival, okay, if you're an IPM person. That's a value that can't really be overlooked. I mean, if something's happening on the farm, or you're doing something for the farm, and it's not being recorded anywhere else, write it down in your notebook and transfer that to your formal record-keeping system as soon as you can possibly remember to do it. If you're more of a tech-savvy person, and I'll give some options for you tech-savvy types, there are digital versions of basically the pocket notebook. Make it very easy to capture the occasional text or image or audio. One of the most common that I see out there a lot is Evernote. It's not the only one like this. There's Google Keep and there's Microsoft OneNote and there's all these other things, but they're basically a neat little digital notebook, and it syncs your notes across all of your platforms. So if you enter it on your phone, it's going to show up on your tablet. If you enter it on your tablet, it's going to show up on your computer, and vice versa. So if you don't always have a notebook in your pocket, but you do always have a smartphone in your pocket, it may prove just as good. The other sort of low-tech record-keeping solution that I kind of have to recommend is the clipboard, specifically a clipboard with a pencil taped on there with a string, and hung right at the place where the activity is going on that needs to be recorded. Okay? So if you have a greenhouse plan, hang it right from the greenhouse door. Okay? Greenhouse plan. On the clipboard with the pencil, hang it right from the frame of the greenhouse door. And whenever you do anything in the greenhouse, write all that stuff down. Okay? If you have a planting and harvesting record, put that in the packing shed, so whenever you come in from the field, you write something down. If you're going to the farmer's market, have a weekly market load list in the box of the market truck. And maybe also have a mileage log in the cab, just so you know how long you've been driving. All of these things are going to be necessary for your record keeping and tax purposes. And the templates that I'm showing here specifically on this slide are from FLAG, which is the Farmers Legal Action Group. They're really good. They're not the only ones out there. There's certainly a ton of other templates out there from a lot of universities, but I just decided to use these as an example. None of these, specific products that I'm showing up here are meant to be specifically a recommendation or an endorsement of those products. It's just the concept is really sound. Okay, so until the ability and the desire of veggie farmers to keep all their records digitally somehow becomes completely widespread, there's just not a lot of ways to replace the strategically placed clipboard on a nail. Exactly the time and exactly the place that something needs to be recorded. By the way, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Veggie Compass also has some paper templates. If you go onto the veggiecompass.com website and go to Tools, not only will you be able to download the Veggie Compass spreadsheet, there are a couple of different work log templates that you'll be able to download as PDFs as well. All right, so for those of you allergic to pencil and paper, desiring a more, 21st century approach to your record keeping, there's some stuff for you. This is going to sound silly and trite, but really the first and foremost digital tool that I can recommend for farm record keeping is the spreadsheet, right? This is not groundbreaking, but nonetheless, there's no other tool that's proven more valuable to the farmers that I know than the spreadsheet that they built themselves, that keeps exactly the data and performs exactly the calculations that that individual producer desires, without any extraneous noise, without any, steep learning curve for new software or whatever. Yeah, it's not going to be a fancy or elegant user interface, but it works perfectly for the person that created it. If you don't use spreadsheets, then you're probably on the wrong webinar. Veggie Compass is a big bear of a spreadsheet, and if you can navigate that thing, you can certainly create your own. This one happened to be created in Google Sheets. So Google Drive is a suite of web apps that basically has a lot of the same functionalities as most of the general office suites out there. This particular spreadsheet is the one my wife and I use to record our egg production and handling on a daily basis. It's a little bit fancier because it's cloud-based, if that impresses anyone. But the thing that I like about it is that I could create it with my computer. I can share the editing permission with my wife, and now we can both update the thing on our phones while we're working on the eggs at night. And plus, hers is an iPhone and mine is an Android, so that interoperability is a really good thing. It's free. It's always saved. You never have to hit File Save or Control S or anything. And all you really need is a Google account with any email address. So I really like this. I think it's a slick system. I'm probably going to develop a lot more record-keeping sheets this way. If you also think it's pretty slick, there's another cool thing with Google Drive, and it's called the Forms app. Forms is essentially a stripped-down survey builder. Okay, it allows a user to input a response that automatically then populates a spreadsheet data repository that's automatically built from the form. Okay. John Hendrickson, the guy that I keep mentioning, whose slides I've been stealing and whose credits I've been giving here, he also has a diversified veggie farm, Stone Circle Farm in Wisconsin. in addition to working for the Center for Integrated Ag System. He uses forms to create work logs, like I mentioned earlier, that Veggie Compass provides. But he actually put his into Google Forms so that when an employee completes a task, they can hop onto their smartphone and they can put in the crop, the little drop-down menu there. They put in the activity, who they are, etc., and that automatically goes to a spreadsheet that he can go in and figure out, payroll or cost allocation when using a Veggie Compass, or just figuring out how time-intensive a particular crop is. If you like the sound of that, you can actually view a tutorial that John made about how to use Google Doc forms for labor tracking. I'll show you another example, one that I produced. All right, so using some of John's innovations, I tried doing my own field production work report here. And I mean, honestly, with a little bit of figuring, it was pretty slick. I put some instructions up here, a drop-down box for who's filling the thing out, when it was performed, the activity, which crop specifically you're working on. Now, when you've got a diversified vegetable farm, this is a fairly long list, but, you can mark which crop and what type of activity. And so most of the time, we've just been talking about general hours on a specific crop. This is a lot like John's form. Who, when, what crop were you working on? If you want to get a little bit more detailed than just simple labor hours, you could put specific types of production activities that you're doing. So am I doing production, planting, transplanting, thinning, pinching, pruning, staking, tying, that kind of stuff? Or was I doing protection activities? Was I mulching? Was I scouting? Was I spraying? Was I flaming? Whatever. And any other activities in the field. So what this will kind of get to is how long does it take you to put it in, how much management time does it take while it's growing for each specific crop, and then always have that nice notes field at the bottom so somebody can enter additional comments as to what went on that day. So real simple way to create a work log that somebody can fill out on their phone, or on a tablet that you provide, or on a computer that happens to be in the lunch station or whatever. Just train them to do this on a regular basis. And if it's just you as your own employee, you train yourself to do this on a regular basis. I mean, probably, if not every day, well, no, at least every day. Sometimes twice a day. Once when you come in for lunch and once before you go to bed at night. That's going to be really essential information. And even if you're not doing it specifically to do analysis with Veggie Compass, that kind of information is going to be super valuable to you as knowing whether or not you're making it, so to speak, as a farm. So those are just some quick recommendations as far as record-keeping practices. I'm going to get back on Veggie Compass here. Okay, so now, finally, the payoff for all of this. And this looks probably horribly garbled because it's a lot of numbers in little format. This is the most garbled screenshot I'm going to show you. It's going to get better, I promise. Bear with me for a moment. Okay, so the payoff for all of that work that you're putting into your record-keeping system and collecting and entering data into Veggie Compass is that Veggie Compass is going to take all that info and create 3 really nice output pages. Okay? First one is cost of production by crop. 2 is your sales output, and that's these tabs down here again that I'm referring to. And 3 is your profit and loss by market channel. That's the really fun one that we'll get to last. Okay, bear with me through these sheets for just a moment. Cost of production by crop sheet shows the total expenses of producing each crop at each stage in its production cycle. So over here it costs $50 for broccoli seed. You had 2,600 transplants, and that was the crop share of your total greenhouse expense. Crop share means that if there are non-crop specific greenhouse expenses, they're going to be attributed evenly. Well, no, excuse me. They're going to be attributed to each crop based on the number of plants that you raised for that particular crop. So it's going to take all those non-specific expenses that you had and spread it out by virtue of how much greenhouse space that crop has taken up. Okay? So for the field growing section over here, and by the way, seed, greenhouse, field growing, harvest, and pack, these big light blue categories up at the top are going to give you an indication of where I'm at. In the field growing section, all of the crop specific costs that you already entered are included. And then the non-crop specific costs, once again, are distributed based on the growing area. So in this case, the farmer entered a number of acres, and any crop that was not, or any cost that was not crop specific got distributed by number of acres. Does that make sense? So there was the specific crop costs and then the general cost that's going to be divided out by the space that it occupied on your farm. And so once again, similarly for the harvest and pack section over here on the right, non-crop specific costs are distributed out to all crops again. So you have the crop specific cost plus the non-crop specific cost distributed by the amount of time that you have to spend harvesting and packing those different crops. So each different section of the production cycle has a way to ascribe non-crop specific costs on a proportional basis to your individual crops. A lot of times those kind of non-crop specific costs are lost. I mean, the cost of your tomato cages or whatever that you forgot to enter, well, no, that'd be a crop specific one. So crops, black plastic, for example, if you're using that on multiple crops, that'll get spread out. So all of that is just to kind of understand where these numbers are coming from. The last two columns over here on the right, that has the total cost of production for each crop. So this person spent $3,500 growing broccoli, and the total unit cost of production, harvest, and pack for that crop. So in order to get a pound of broccoli, see they entered the unit of measure right over here. In order to get a pound of broccoli from seed to market, it cost that person $6.77. And that broccoli is going to be an interesting example. I'll come back to that one in the not too distant future. And you can probably guess what I'm going to say. How many of you guys have paid $6.77 for a pound of broccoli in recent memory? Okay, cost of production sheet. Now moving on to the sales output sheet. Again, it looks horribly dense, but let me try and break it down. So the sales output sheet calculates the cost of production, the gross margin, and the total crop cost, aka your break-even cost. So the cost of these two are different. Crop cost of production and total crop cost per unit are different because this one does not include marketing and management. This total crop cost per unit does include marketing and management. Okay, so that's really going to be the real break-even cost of a unit of whatever it is that you're producing. So many folks consider their variable costs and their fixed costs in terms of production expenses, and they use that to decide what they think is their break-even price. But there's still costs associated with, like I said before, the general management, all those sales calls, all that record keeping, etc. And there's still costs associated with getting that head of broccoli from your farm to the farmer's market. Okay? So incorporating all of those things in a total crop cost per unit, also known as the break-even, is going to give you a much greater sense of what you need to be charging for that crop in order to come out ahead. And as you can see, the unit average price for her broccoli was $3.16 at the market. The total cost of producing that pound of broccoli was $8.11, so she was losing almost $5 a pound selling broccoli. I know for a fact that she re-examined her broccoli production for the following year. Okay, since each of these different market channels has a different cost structure. Okay, so a farmer's market takes more labor hours than a wholesale market, for example. And each market channel has a different pricing structure too. I mean, for example, if the farmer's market, if you charge $3 a head for broccoli, you're probably going to charge slightly less than that if you're selling the broccoli wholesale. So, as a result, break-even price and profitability can vary pretty substantially between market channels. All right, so total crop cost per unit for going to the CSA was $8.11 for broccoli. It was $7.89 to go to the farmer's market. It was I didn't go wholesale or farm stand, but you can see that these different crops. Let's look at one that was a little bit more profitable for her. Hybrid tomatoes here, line 7. All right. Net profit per pony, pony crate, $16.14 at the CSA, $25 at the farmer's market. Move over here, $11 selling it through wholesale. So you can also allocate which crops are going to be primarily sold through which market channels in order to maximize your bottom line profitability. I mean, yes, obviously there's some outside considerations such as you always want to have tomatoes in your CSA box, and that's fine, even if it's not your max profitability market channel. There's other benefits to CSA, like getting paid up front, for example. All right, so clear to the right, Veggie Compass aggregates the sales and the cost data, and for each crop, and it generates sort of a profitability picture for that crop in your farming system. So here, she was losing $2,550 to produce broccoli on her farm last year, but she was making $1,000 producing heads of lettuce and making $8,000 producing hybrid tomatoes. All right, so what this allows you to do is it allows you to go back by market channel and figure out, okay, for example, if you're trying to figure out where the loss is for that broccoli, you can go and look and see that the farmer's market, she was losing almost $2,000 selling broccoli at the farmer's market, where she only lost $500 or almost $600 selling it through the CSA. So if her CSA consumers really want to have broccoli, she could use that as a loss leader as long as it's selling something else that has profitable sales, like the hybrid tomatoes, for example. And if there's no differences in the market channel profitability, and you see a crop that's giving you a loss, maybe you want to go back into your production data and figure out what part of the crop production has the highest costs associated with it. Are you spending an awful lot of time packing because you have a complicated packing system? Or is it just simple field growing that's costing you a bunch of money? The beauty of Veggie Compass is you can go back through all this giant pile of numbers and figure out where the problem is and try to remedy that problem or simply eliminate that crop the following year for your production system. Okay. Finally, the smallest, but also probably one of the most telling spreadsheets in the Veggie Compass tool is the profit and loss by market channel sheet. So what this is a summary of the whole farm business and its profitability. And what's cool is it displays that net profit by market channel as well as for the whole farm. So basically this sheet brings in all the major figures for sales and expenses and such, and from the other sheets around Veggie Compass, and it kind of compares those things one-to-one as percentages. So for example, you can see that the farmer's market was a pretty essential market for this farm. Farmer's market sales made up more than half of her total sales for the farm. So $210,000 worth of sales made up 53% of her percent of total sales. More than half of her farm sales went through the farmer's market. Production expenses for the farmer's market crops were $109,000, right over half of the percent of sales. So whatever went out at the farmer's market, half of those dollars were associated to production costs. So after you take out the production expenses, you see your gross profit. Now remember, gross profit versus net profit. Gross still has some more things to come out of it. 48% gross profit at the farmer's market. Now take and add the market channel expenses, $27,444, and the general management and admin that were allocated to farmer's market. And all of a sudden you come up with another $78,000 worth of expenses, or 37%. So that net profit by the market channel, by farmers markets, was $22,963, which is a pretty large component of the $24,704 over here on the right. That is her grand total net profit for the farm. So a very, very essential market channel for her. On the flip side of that coin is her farm stand. Okay, she only moved $26,000 worth of product through the farm stand, less than 7% of her farm sales. Production expenses were again up right around 55%, 54.5. Gross profit of $12,000. Marketing expenses $8,000. General management and admin expenses $6,400. Okay, so you're looking at these two numbers, and that added together, $15,330. That looks like a lot more than the gross profit number. This person actually had a negative net profit through her farm stand market channel. So, as a result, she's going to either have to look for some efficiencies in her farm stand, see how many employees are manning that thing at any given time, whether or not there could be an honor system, whatever. How can she modify that farm stand in order to become a net positive profit in the market channel analysis? So over to the right, the grand total net profit is added to any other income, that $12,000 that she got. I think that was from rent, if I remember correctly. And that basically puts together a total figure of taxable income for the farm, down here on the lower right-hand corner, $36,704. So this farm came out in the black. So that number may seem a little underwhelming, given that the farm had to generate nearly $400,000 in sales to generate $25,000 in net profit. But I want you to remember that simply by using this tool, I'm willing to bet that this farm is probably accounting for more of its production, marketing, and management costs, especially labor, than most other farms that are in this category. Okay, so just to recap, the payoff for doing all this work, knowing your cost of production by crop, and also what segment of production within each crop, you're going to know what the seed cost, the greenhouse cost, the field cost, and the harvest costs all were, up to a total over here on the right. Sales output, knowing whether or not there's a net profit by crop, by market channel, and also as a total, clear over on the right. And finally, this sort of really concise dashboardy type of picture on which market channels are actually making a positive net contribution to the bottom line of your overall farm. Whew. That's a lot of info on a fairly dense spreadsheet, and I hope everybody had a cup of coffee with them or something. I'm going to try and switch back to my PowerPoint here so I can show my contact information. Okay, so at this point you should have a fairly complete familiarity with Veggie Compass. What looked like a massive, ugly unusable spreadsheet now is more like a series of parts that you can probably figure out, hopefully. You know what it does, you know what data it needs, and you know the kind of valuable information that it creates to help you make informed financial decisions on your farm. I got to go out by saying thanks once again to University of Wisconsin and all the authors and educators and sponsors behind Veggie Compass. And I want to thank you guys for listening, for pushing through a dense subject and a complicated tool, but all with the silver lining of a more complete understanding of your operating, your marketing, and your overall financial health of your diversified vegetable farm. So I really think that you'll find that type of knowledge well worth the time that it takes to generate it. So that said, thanks for being here once again.
You're very familiar with this program. When did you first witness this program, and how long did it take you to feel comfortable putting the program together for your farm, or how would you feel others? What's the startup time? How long does it take to become familiar enough to use it?
So I first looked at this last year. But to be horribly frank, I wouldn't say I had a command of it until I was getting ready for this presentation within the course of the past week. What really got me there, what really got me to understand the full extent of this thing, two tools, two resources. One was the set of webinars available from Southern SOG and their Growing Farm Profits website, and I can actually pull that up in theory. If people want to see that. Right here. Good. So this is the Growing Farm Profits website, and they have a whole section dedicated to Veggie Compass, this second tab right here. And there's a series of 8 videos on Vimeo. And this woman here, Ellen Polishuk, she is both the presenter and the farmer whose data was being shared on the Veggie Compass template. That's the data I was using today. So a very forthcoming farmer, very knowledgeable and familiar with the tool. So, Mike, to answer your question, in combination with between Schedule F and Veggie Compass, I am now ready to start creating my own spreadsheet templates for record keeping on my farm. Now my farm is much simpler than most of y'all's because we're just egg producers. So we've got one crop basically, but we've got a couple of market channels. So I now know what expenses I want to record and what sales costs, expenses, so the market channel costs associated with each of those that I want to record better. And as a matter of fact, I've just recently downloaded, and I'm a nerdy person here for saying this, I've just downloaded an app on my phone in order to start recording my labor hours, my drive miles, and any other kind of transaction expenses that, when you go to Farm and Fleet to buy something, that you can take a picture of the receipt and it uploads it and automatically puts it on there. So that's a really sweet little benefit of having the smartness of a smartphone in your pocket. One other, let me give you 2 more resources while I'm over here on Firefox. The record keeping instruction templates from Flag are right here. I wouldn't bother trying to write down this URL. I would Google Flag record keeping templates and it should pull right up. Okay? And the other resource that I want to point out to folks is the Moses Farm Finances page. They've got a lot of really good fact sheets, books, and other kind of resources on farm finances. So, Mike, the last word on the question you asked is I am now ready, after becoming familiar with all of those things, to create my own thorough template for record keeping instead of just using the generalized stuff from the Schedule F. Where do organic certification fees go from Teacup Farm? And what app did you download from Christy? Christy, the app that this is the faster answer. Again, this isn't an endorsement of a product, but the app that I just downloaded literally like 2 days ago, because it's the only one that I could find that where you put in hours and miles and expenditures, is called Expensify. And the reason I picked that one is for all those different parts that you can enter, and also it has interoperability with QuickBooks, which is what my wife and I will be using for our primary formal record-keeping software. So for Teacup Farm, where were your organic certification fees going to go? I don't know if I better switch back to Veggie Compass or not, but in step one in the expenses input, this is going to be just like your 1040 or whatever. You're going to have, that's going to be one of those general costs. It's going to be the cost that is for your entire farm. So in that type of situation, you could list that as a professional service fee. You could list it as a subscription in Veggie Compass, either one of those things. This has flexibility. You can put it wherever you want to put it as long as you can remember you put it there. Maybe even create one of those little red triangle notes for yourself to know where it went. But it's going to be in the left-hand column of step one, your expenses input. I don't think you can break out certification fees by individual crop, so that's why I would do it that way.
And Andy, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I'm assuming if people do go ahead, or some of these folks who are online do go ahead and work with Veggie Compass, if they had any questions or concerns, they could probably address them to you.
Yeah, if it's general use questions, I can certainly help. I haven't gone through and done a full-blown analysis of my own farm with Veggie Compass. It's not exactly the right tool for us, but I am going to use a lot of the lessons from it to modify mine. But if you want detail or technical questions about functionality and things like that, I would go ahead and contact John Hendrickson. And his contact information is right there on the first tab of Veggie Compass, jhendrick@wisc.edu, if I remember correctly. He is the primary point of contact for Veggie Compass. That being said, he is also a vegetable farmer, so catching him during the summer is probably rough. In that case, I might try Southern SAWG, the Southern Sustainable Ag Working Group, and their folks, because they're also willing to answer questions on Veggie Compass. I know it's not fun, and it's not supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be functional. So I hope you can get the type of system put in place that's really going to help you make financial decisions. I know the value of it because I did not have a good system in place this past year, and I have learned that being in a situation where you're not exactly sure which decision to make as a result of your finances and your cash flow because you haven't done a thorough analysis of it, it's not a good way to go. Can I show my egg spreadsheet again? Yeah, sure, if you want to see it. That's no trouble. Egg spreadsheet. Go to egg records. So what I have in this spreadsheet currently is the date, the Julian day, the sell-by date, all of those things that you have to have on the egg carton to sell in Illinois, how many collected, what kind of laying percentage we got, what sizes they were, and then also a shrink as a result of bad eggs or breakage. So that's the extent that I have of that particular sheet right now. But like I said, I love being able to modify it on my phone. Because, you know, when you're standing there in a dark room candling eggs, it sure makes it a lot easier to put something into a bright little screen than it does onto a, onto a clipboard in the dark. And that way I don't have to transcribe it anywhere either. This makes it a lot easier for me to do the math. And I'm kind of one of those people who believes, for be it correctly or falsely, that people who can who run spreadsheets and GIS are eventually going to take over the world. So that's my bias for that. Where do you track boxes or day olds or pullets or feed? So like packaging inventory. Yeah, I don't currently have a tracking system for something like that. Not saying that I shouldn't, just saying that I don't. When I run out of boxes, I order more. And we have those in our bank transactions. Day olds or pullets or feed, I know how many I got, and I should be recording any kind of death loss that we have, but we haven't had much, so I haven't been very good about that. So, yeah, teacup, there's a lot more things that I need to track that I'm not currently, and I'm in the process of developing those record-keeping systems now. My tax appointment's in 10 days, so they better be ready by then. Cost of the program and website. Cost of the program, Mike, is free. VeggieCompass.com. Terry, you're welcome. Everybody else, I hope you found some value in it. Thanks, everyone. Have a great one.